What's going on, guys? Welcome back to TCG Empire, where we have all things TCG. Now today we are going to talk about Tech Tuesday, and Tech Tuesday is going to involve the deck of the week, and we're going to talk about some decks that the deck can play, and some decks that can play counters against the meta deck of the week. So for today, we are going to talk about decks that are good against Gardevoir EX, and we're also going to talk about decks that are good for Gardevoir EX to play. So starting off the list, we are going to talk about some decks that Gardevoir EX can play. And to start things off, we have Mimikyu EX. Now, Mimikyu EX, it has 190 HP, meaning it's relatively buff for what it's mainly used against. We have a Psychic Energy Void Return, which does 30 damage, and it says you may switch this Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. That's not the attack that we're really worried about. The attack that we're actually worried about is Energy Burst, and it states that this attack does 30 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. Now, what Mimikyu is good against is actually Alolan Vulpix V-Star. Now, Alolan Vulpix V-Star actually counters Gardevoir as a whole, as its attack states that it cannot take damage from Pokemon with abilities during the next turn, and Gardevoir runs heavy on abilities. So here we're just going to talk about the fact that Mimikyu EX is a no ability attacker, and with the 3 energy that Alolan Vulpix needs, that's guaranteed 90 damage, as well as the energy that is on you, that's 180 damage. And with Gardevoir's ability, you can actually buff Mimikyu in order to hit the numbers that you need to in order to KO opposing V-Star Vulpix. Now, the next card we're going to talk about is Champions Festival. I know not everyone has access to the card, but Champions Festival is a really good card if you have it. In order to allow Gardevoir to be synergized and work well, you need to accelerate energy from the discard, and it really benefits from being able to accelerate energy, but at the same time you have to deal 20 damage per energy that you attach. So Champions Festival actually lets you heal 10 damage from each of your Pokemon once during your turn, and this is just phenomenal, as in turn it just takes away 10 damage from whatever you're accelerating to, and sometimes that number is actually amazing, and the 10 HP can actually be very useful. I had a situation today where a Zacian V only had 40 health left, and it could have been KO'd, but having 10 HP remaining saved me from not being KO'd and my opponent taking 2 prizes. And I didn't run Champions Festival, but the sense of Champions Festival means that some Pokemon can actually live attacks when they would have died, and sometimes that 10 HP can matter. The next card that we're going to talk about is Tool Jammer. Now, Tool Jammer is seeing a rise of play in Japan, and when it comes to Tool Jammer, it's really a good card against certain decks. Now, Tool Jammer is really good because along with the rise of Tool Jammer, there is also the rise of Panic Mask, and Panic Mask, as we'll get to, states that Pokemon with 40 HP or less can't deal damage to the Pokemon that Panic Mask is attached to. Now, as far as Tool Jammer goes, it completely nullifies that and allows you to go through. The whole point of Gardevoir is to damage yourself in order to hit big numbers, and with Panic Mask, it actually nullifies you from being able to make plays such as that. If you have a VMAX, for instance, you need 9 energy on a Zacian, and when it comes to late game, that is 180 damage on you, and you only have 40 HP or less. And if for some reason they have a mask on the VMAX, it means that you're not able to deal any damage, and you're not able to use stone into the 4 prizes that you would get to win the game. For the next card, we're actually going to talk about Lost Vacuum. Lost Vacuum isn't a secret tech. A lot of lists in Gardevoir just aren't playing it, and it actually comes in handy when it comes to running into decks that play multiple Path of the Peak, or multiple decks that actually have ways in which they can attach tools or anything really. Lost Vacuum is just a solid card, and it lets you get rid of things that you really don't need to see in the deck. For instance, if you have Manaphy and you already used all of your abilities with Kirlia, It's more of a dead card, so being able to put it in the lost zone and not worry about it later on means that it's just an extra card that you can get rid of in order to sacrifice your opponent's board when it comes to having Path out. And it's just a really good answer in the case of Path of the Peak, because then it means it's an extra card that you don't have to rely on having a counter stadium for. The next card we're going to talk about is actually Panic Mask. As I mentioned before, it prevents all damage done to the Pokemon that it's attached to from your opponents that have 40 HP or less remaining. It's a really solid card to play in the Gardevoir Mirror Match. Their Zacian cannot KO you without having at least 9 energy on it. And if they want to boss your Gardevoir EX up with 310 HP, they have to at least leave themselves with 40 HP or less, assuming that they don't attach from hand and then accelerate 8 energy. But doing so, this just makes your opponent have to really think about how they want to commit their energy and whether they want to discard it or not. So that's all of the techs as far as what Gardevoir can run. You have Mimikyu again, as I said, to help against Alolan Vulpix, and the rest of the cards are really just to help against any and everything that may be on the rise. But now we're going to get right into the counters to run against Gardevoir. Okay guys, as I mentioned, there's a small list of cards in here and they're relatively the same. You have Tool Jammer for using against Gardevoir. Gardevoir really relies heavy on using the Sky Seal Stone in matchups where it can be applicable. Now, Tool Jammer nullifies the effect of Sky Seal Stone, and it means that if you put it on a Regieleki, for instance, or an Arceus V-Star, or even a Lugia V-Star, it means that with a VMAX, they're not getting 4 prizes, they're only getting 3, and when it comes to a V-Star, they're only getting 2 prizes, they're not going to get the extra prize. And Tool Jammer is such a great card because it nullifies the fact that they can't win in 2 KOs versus 3, and it's just a very solid card. Now, Panic Mask, as we talked about, Panic Mask is really good in the Gardevoir Mirror Match, but Panic Mask is also good against things like when you have a VMAX on board. It means that, as mentioned earlier when the Gardevoir EX segment came up, you can't power up a Zacian and KO a VMAX. And with the HP that Gardevoir has, Baby Gardevoir, you can't put enough energy on it in order to KO a VMAX or a big HP threat, because the max you can put onto a Baby Gardevoir is 6 energy without energy attachments from the hand. So Panic Mask is a very good card. It really nullifies the idea behind what Gardevoir wants to do, and it really makes them limit their options as far as what they want to discard as far as energy counts. They may want to keep 3 in their hand rather than throwing them all in the discard. And the final card that everybody knows about is Path to the Peak. Now, Path to the Peak is a card that's been in format for a good amount of time and has seen play in a lot of decks and has shut off a lot of decks. Now, Path to the Peak is no uncommon factor when it comes to dealing with Gardevoir EX. It's just a really good card because it makes it to where they can't use their Greninja's ability. They cannot discard energy to draw 2 cards from it. They're not able to accelerate energy from the discard, which means that they have to hold them in their hand and figure out exactly what they want to do. And most of the time, Gardevoir only plays 2 stadiums, and so if you run at least 2 to 3 Path to the Peak and play your turns right, you can outpace them when it comes to the placement of their stadium, which means Path shuts off Gardevoir, and in turn they have no energy synergy, and so they have to manually power up things. And when you manually power up with Gardevoir, it's not the easiest thing because you're only hitting small numbers. Most of the time, Gardevoir relies on its ability in order to swing heavy numbers. So that is the idea behind the techs for and against Gardevoir. As we saw, we have the techs that are good against Gardevoir, and then we have the techs that are good in Gardevoir. In general, apply these techs as you will. It really depends on your meta and how everything is playing out at your locals, so get a feel for the ideas and think about really what you want to do. But thank you guys so much for watching today's Tech Tuesday. I hope you enjoy. Remember, if you do enjoy, like that button, and also remember to subscribe and turn on post notifications. And if you've come up with any other techs to use either in Gardevoir or against Gardevoir, be sure to leave a comment. That way we can analyze it together and it'll possibly be in another video. But again, thank you so much, and thank you to Zach for helping me figure out these techs. It's been a great video, and testing Gardevoir, I can definitely see a lot of these cards being useful.